I'm going to show some of the other features of the sensor. So I never showed this from the side view in the other videos, but you can see the air gap in this one, pretty good. Closer you can get down to those Hall effect sensors, the better the data is going to be. But aside from being able to internally linearize its own data and do some other, cool calibration stuff, I'm just going to go through a basic calibration on this sensor. We got some other features inside. Okay, so I've got a basic sensor set up. I'm going to come back to the computer and I'm going to go to the plotter. Pardon my thing here. I'm using the Arduino dev tool plotter here. So, okay. So now I'll rotate the sensor off camera here and you can see we're getting through 360 degrees. While we're plugged into USB, we can do some interesting stuff. So the first thing we can do is while we're plugged into USB, we could send it serial data and set some settings inside the sensor or change its behavior. So one thing we could do is send a 0. So you can see I'm just gonna send a 0 down here and that should reset the 0 reference of the sensor. Click it, boom, there's at 0. Now you'll see it's bouncing between, it's right on the edge of 0 and 360 degrees. But if I move the sensor off, you see that there it is. Also note, when you're running the sensor and you go around 0, the other LEDs that aren't illuminated will briefly flash to indicate you that's where your 0 is on the sensor. So 0 can be anywhere. We can make that 0. And if we come up here, we can say 0, click it. Now we're reset to 0. You can also do that physically with the button. It's a little bit more challenging, but in general with the button, if we do a push and hold, it should rebase itself to 0. So now that would be 0 is set there. So that's good. Okay, other stuff. We're in degrees mode right now. We could send an R, lowercase r, put the sensor into radians mode. So now you'll see, if we go through a couple rotations, you can barely see it. The screen will have to scroll off. But now instead of getting 0 to 360 degrees, we're getting 0 to 6.24 radians. Give it 1 second here until this scrolls off. I'm physically just rotating the sensor over there and you'll see. Come on, data. It's auto scales. Okay, so now you can see 0 to 6.24. Okay, that's interesting. All right, so I'm doing a clockwise rotation of the sensor right now, and I'm getting that shape. I'm going to send a J, and now you'll see that same clockwise rotation of the sensor is producing an inverted signal. So you can invert the signal internally. All this data is, these commands are on the product webpage, so you don't have to worry about recording them. But anyway, so in general, you can invert, you can go degrees, you can go radians. You can also, if you're on the monitor setting where you can see data, you could also send an A for all. And all is handy because it shows you all kinds of data coming from the sensor. That shows you the Hall effect data, shows you the real loop time of the sensor, shows you the angle, shows you the min-max values of your sensors, shows you the angle offset number, which is the internally number we store to set zeros. And then it also shows you the total number of calibration points you're using, and it shows you your actual 0 to 4096 digital representation of the analog output. So sometimes that's handy. You can go back to D to go to degrees. And I think I'm gonna go back to the plotter. One of the most useful features inside the sensor is it has a filter. So you'll see that the data's a little bouncy right there. It's inherently bouncy because it's analog. And we just have a blue light. I'm gonna send an F and hit enter. And you'll see the data calm down quite a bit. And now the blue light is blinking. There's 4 steps of filtering here. You just keep sending Fs and it's just a more and more aggressive filter. Now remember, any filter is going to slow the sensor data down. So you may not want to do this internally on the sensor, but the sensor does provide it for you. So I'm going to do another level of filter. You should get on this one, you get a green blinking light. Then I'm gonna go all the way to the 4th level of filter. That gets every light flashing, and it's incredibly heavily filtered. So it's kind of hard to see, but I will do a full rotation and you'll see how long that takes. You can see that it settles very slowly, but is very, very clean. And now I'll cycle through again, one more. That turns the filters off. I'm gonna do the same full circle, and you can see the difference and how much sharper the data is. So, neat feature, internal filtering. Don't need it, but you can use it. Other stuff you can do in this mode is you can change the analog output from 3 volts to 5 volts. Sending a 3 is 3 volt mode, sending a 5 is 5 volt mode. It always defaults to 3.3 volt mode when you start. And in general, those are the features.